Sports Finder community. We're back with our regular segment where we speak to great people from the world of sport. And today it is no different. I have Mr. Wes McCurtis, the Athletic Director of Cypress College. Wes, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Wes, it's my absolute pleasure. Wes, before we get into the nitty-gritty part of the conversation, take me back in time. Who was Wes as a young man at school?
Wow. That we are going a little back in time there. So, I grew up in Lancaster, California, which is like high desert, still considered LA County, but kind of in the middle of nowhere. I was a pretty good athlete as a kid. I played all the sports that you could think of, even did things like BMX out there in the desert where, we're racing bikes and stuff like that. But basketball was really ended up being the main sport for me. So I ended up going to Cal Lutheran University out in Thousand Oaks. And I wanted to be a student athlete. So those first 2 years, I had, like I said, I had a really good high school career. I was basically just a practice squad player at Cal Lutheran for those first 2 years as a freshman and a sophomore. Really, my days were filled with all kinds of different things, kind of like we were talking about even before here. Kind of the day in the life of a student athlete deal. I was waking up 5 a.m. for those early practices. Then we'd have class. Then I had 2 jobs at the time because I had to support myself through school. So I had an on-campus job with the annual fund office where we're calling alumni asking for donations back to the school. So you can imagine that was super exciting. And then I had an off-campus job as well with the National Notary Association in the San Fernando Valley as a marketing assistant. So it was really tough those first 2 years, honestly, balancing, trying to, compete as a student athlete at a high level. I was a first generation college student. So, no one else from my family had gone. So I didn't really have any of those tips or tricks to really fall back on. I just had to figure it out. So attending my classes and then working those 2 jobs. My days were full. But then, that experience really is what got me going after my sophomore year when I decided to give up athletics and kind of just focus on my grades, my career after college. But that experience, those first 2 years, even just as a practice squad guy, seeing kind of how the athletics office at the college level worked and what type of resources were available for students. Some of the areas that I thought, were lacking or, that could be better. And so I just thought it would be cool. That was really where I got the idea to be an athletic director. I thought it would be a great opportunity to, provide those resources for student athletes, kind of build a culture of your own, when hiring coaches, staff, and really, having people come together on a college campus around athletics. So after my undergrad, I ended up going to Long Beach State to get my master's degree in sport management, and that's kind of where I started at Cypress College as just a graduate intern in the sports information office, and ended up being the sports information director. And then last year, was my first year moving into the athletic director position. So, and it's an interesting time to do that, obviously, where halfway through my first season, we get shut down because of COVID. And now we're kind of in a weird place where, I have a bunch of mentors and other ADs that I, lean on for some expertise. And even there right now, they're just like, Wes, there's really no playbook for this right now. So I'm really in the same spot that they're all in, just trying to, play this day by day and figure out, how to get our athletes on campus safely for the time being. And then as far as what is going to be needed for, testing and those sort of things when it comes time for competition in the spring. So that's where we're at.
Wes, that sounds like an amazing journey. Take me back to your college years.
Yeah.
you played you played college sport at a very high level.
Right.
Your days would have been filled crazy, working and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
How did you guide your exit out of the college system? What was that like? How did you find a job after that whole college journey?
Yeah. So it's it's interesting because, you know, like I said, when I was in my undergrad at Cal Lutheran, I wasn't someone who could just go to class and then, you know, have the money that I needed to, you know, live off campus and do the, you know, do the thing, had put gas in the car, do the things that I wanted to do. So when I was in school, I really just, you know, I was a business administration major as an undergrad. I had kind of a little bit of a background in marketing and some of those skills as far as, you know, creating content, graphic design, some of those things. So like I said, that first internship that I had was as a marketing assistant. By the time I got to my junior year, I was actually working for like a smaller marketing firm out in Calabasas, where, you know, I had certain clients that I dealt with as far as creating content for them and their websites and their social media pages. And really, it was just one of those things. I thought that it was something that I'd be really interested in as a career, but as I started doing it at that time, I realized that, you know, I thought I was good at it. I had the skills to do that long term, but it just wasn't something that I was super passionate about, honestly. So I knew that really the only thing that was going to keep me going long term was something athletics related. And like I said, I kind of had that idea in mind of eventually being you know, an athletic director at the college level. So, you know, I submitted that application to go join the graduate program at Long Beach State in sport management. And once I got there, obviously I had to quit the job that I had, the full-time opportunity that I had at the marketing firm. So I pretty much had to move and really start over in an area that I wasn't familiar with. I didn't know anyone out here in Long Beach, Orange County area. So fresh out of undergrad, you know, I was working while I was a grad student. You know, I was working at Foot Locker. I was working at for the city of Irvine athletics, just, you know, working at parks, doing men's league type stuff, softball games, basketball. While I was again working as a grad student, and, you know, along with going to those classes for grad school, you had to put in a large amount of internship hours. And that's really where the opportunities came for me. And like I said, I saw that internship posting at Cypress College, which is a California community college. I hadn't even really considered, you know, 2-year colleges, junior colleges heading into the program. You know, everyone goes in with the mindset, you know, they want to be the AD at, you know, USC, UCLA, those type of schools. So I thought it was an interesting opportunity for me, you know, to kind of get acclimated with the community college level. So I took that internship in the sports information office. I was an intern for 2 months, and then the sports information director at that time took another job. So at that point, 2 months in, you know, the AD just kind of looked at me and was like, "Hey, you're the only one that's been around doing any of this. So could you do this, you know, as part-time hourly just to finish out the season? Because again, this is in the middle of the fall season. So, I mean, they don't have time to, you know, recruit and hire someone full-time, you know, in the middle of the year. So I kind of just took it over and finished out that year, and then pretty much had to apply for my own job at the end of the season, and luckily ended up getting it. So I was the full-time sports information and marketing director for Cypress for 4 years. And then, you know, I ended up winning the Brass Top Award, which goes to the top SID in the state of California. So I won that in my last year. And then that's when I was really looking, you know, kind of for that next step, that next challenge. And luckily, you know, that opportunity came at the college that I was already at Cypress, where I already had great relationships, you know, with our coaches, our staff, our alumni, our athletes, a lot of people in other areas of the campus. And So I think so far, I've kind of been able to build on those relationships and kind of, they pass the torch to me, and hopefully, like I said, I've really got one real semester as far as actual gameplay and competition goes under my belt. But I think that I've done a good job so far, and hopefully we can continue to build moving forward here at Cypress.
Well, I mean, the positive from what you've been through is it doesn't get much more difficult than this. So the future's bright. It's all up.
Right, I'm looking forward to a normal season at some point, and hopefully it'll feel easy after all this. So we'll see.
Absolutely, absolutely. Athletic director. Well, what does your day to day look like? I mean, so many people are intrigued, especially in the whole college world and college sports in particular. Athletic directors are a very important part of the whole system, and there's always that intrigue about what they do day to day. Share it with us.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's a common misconception, I would say, when people hear athletic director, and again, they kind of throw all the different levels in the same category when you're talking about 4-year universities, 2-year colleges, and even high schools. They just think an athletic director at all those levels kind of does the same thing, when in reality those are 3 completely different jobs as far as I'm concerned. So I could speak for what it's like at the 2-year level out here in California. Since California Community College Athletics is its own organization run by the 3C2A. So it's kind of like California's version of the NCAA. But at Cypress, kind of going through a day to day, there's really not a normal day in the life of an athletic director. It's really you can come in with a plan each day, and something will happen, and your whole day will look completely different than you thought it was going to look. But as far as the main things that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I mean, I'm overseeing budgeting is a huge thing. Budgeting as well as fundraising. They're not the most exciting things, but they're extremely important. So I'm pretty much signing off on all the purchases for all of our teams, as far as hotels, transportation, officials, team gear, shoes, all those things. I'm involved in helping with all those purchases. I'm involved in helping out with coming up with creative ways to fundraise for our department, whether that's through selling advertisements in our facilities, on our website, through our social media. So I'm working with our sports information director on a daily basis to kind of facilitate some of those things. I'm overseeing, again, I don't have an associate AD or anything like that. So I'm working directly with our staff every day. So equipment, sports information, athletic training, compliance, eligibility. So they're looking to me for direction, especially in a situation like now where the whole everything that they're used to doing since they've been around is being thrown off. So I really have to give step in as kind of that leader and make sure that I'm in tune with what's going on, what other schools are doing, and what we need to do to prepare for our season. And then again, in a normal year, I'm dealing with a lot of the game management aspects as well. So at our level, I have to be at every home event as the administrator on site. So I'm helping get our scoreboard operator, our student workers who are coming out, wiping the floor, book, PA announcer. I'm letting officials in the locker room at halftime. There's really, there's a ton that goes into it. But like I said, it's really exciting and it's really rewarding to have the opportunity to, work with our student athletes and coaches on a daily basis. And again, that kind of even goes to, I'm working with, support programs as well for our student athletes, establishing things like our student athlete success center, where, athletes can go in, log hours, get tutoring, be sent out to other resources on campus, or have them actually brought to our athletes rather than them kind of just, wandering around trying to figure out, where they need to go, who they need to talk to, what they need to do. We've created SAC at Cypress, which is, the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. So I'm working with our student athlete leadership to get things done on campus as well. So yeah, I mean, and there's new stuff, kind of popping up every day. But I have a great support staff that I rely on here at Cypress, and I have great, coaches who have been recognized at the state, at the national level, for what they're able to do when it comes to, competition and just creating those strong relationships with their athletes. So that makes it a little bit easier, but there at times it can be a little, it feels like there's just a ton on your plate, but it's what we're asked to do, and it's exciting. So at the end of the day, we have the fun job. We get to work with sports and work with student athletes, and so I'm thankful for it every day.
Well, you're definitely grinding, Mr. Wes, on the grind. Let's talk about your time in the system, from being an athlete to now pretty much the top of the chain where you're currently working. How much change have you seen in your time in the collegiate sporting system, from being an athlete to actually being now a part of the, how can I say this, a part of the organization as a whole, but really the program director and whatnot, involved in the strategic decision making of programs? How much has that changed in your time?
I mean, it's definitely changed. I mean, it's changed in a number of ways, as far as what's not really what's important, but I mean, some of those things, have changed as well, as far as the importance of, social media and web presence, just overall online presence for, college athletics. That's something, when I was an athlete, that was starting to grow, but wasn't really a huge deal yet. And that's one of the things where, being a former SID, I understand, what schools are doing and what resources are being provided to, build that brand in athletics, and then, market that brand, through original content like videos, redesigning their websites, social media, all those things. And then even that goes along with the branding, even in your facilities. So it ties in a lot to, the importance of having top of the line facilities for these athletes. They want the best. They want to know where they're going is going to give them every opportunity to reach the peak of their performance, and they want people to be there and watch them, at that, compete at that level as well. So I would say the main things, if I had to choose like three of them, would be, the online piece, as far as having that presence in athletics. Really the emphasis on, I mean, the facilities have always been important, but the emphasis of those facilities on, recruiting. It's really kind of everybody trying to outdo each other at this point is what it feels like at times, where, one school gets, a new, they redo their gym or something like that. And then you got coaches coming to the ADs being like, well, they got this over there. How am I supposed to compete with that when it comes to, getting players and those things? So those are the questions that, I have to be able to answer. And again, it comes down to having those relationships with your, your executive team. So the president, vice president of your college, and being able to, help start those conversations and hopefully continue to move in that direction on our own campus. And I'm assuming that's what ADs across the nation are doing pretty much at all times, because those are things that are changing every year, where someone's always getting something new, whether it's new technology or some type of facility enhancement. So you're always trying to build those things up. And then the other piece of it, I would say, is really just student athletes have changed just in general. What they want from their experience, I think, what they expect their relationship to be with staff and their coaches, I think has changed dramatically over time. Like when I go back to when I was playing, the relationships with coaches, a lot of times it was just like, well, they told me to do this, so I have to, no questions asked. This is what I'm doing. That's not really the relationship that you get, that a lot of successful coaches have anymore. It's just not. Our student athletes in this generation, they ask questions. They want those strong relationships where they feel like they're being heard by their coaches if they have a concern. Someone that they feel is possibly more approachable, and someone that that they can come back to the college or the university after they leave and really still feel that strong tie to the culture of the athletic department at that college. So I think that's something that's kind of been an added element in the last few years, where really how coaches interact with their players, how staff need to interact with their players in order to create a successful culture in athletics, is definitely something that's changing, and it's going to continue to change over time, with all the changes coming along here in college athletics, and just some of the things that are if we want this if we want this model to stay the way that it is, or anything like that. I mean, at some point, the NCAA and some of these organizations are going to have to adjust their way of thinking if they want student athletes to continue to come and compete at their schools. So that's something that I think they need to take a look at for sure.
Which leads me into my next question: is what future trends and developments do you see happening moving forward, especially after the times that we've been through now? How does your college really change now, or the role of the college actually change? Because we've seen with COVID, there's been a huge shift online and digital. Hopefully, once we have a vaccine and things are sorted out, we'll have a bit more person-to-person experience. But do you see any changes as a result of what we've just been through? Do you think it'll go back to what it was? If so, why or why not?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, and I think there are minor things that are going to change, but ultimately, I don't see any huge changes following that are related to COVID in any way, really, other than maybe some of the ways that we meet and that we communicate with each other, as far as even what we're doing right now, sitting here on Zoom. I've done hundreds of these Zooms in the last few months, and I feel like this is something that's probably going to be here to stay, as far as communicating between staff, between administrators, and even between coaches and athletes. I think this is something that coaches are going to kind of build upon moving forward in those efforts to communicate with, whether it's current athletes, recruits, or anything like that. And then we've even added a couple things at Cypress that we weren't able to do before, but because of COVID and the questions around how many fans, if any, are we going to be able to have at games? Right now we have a ban on in-person recruiting here in California. So you're only able to recruit, via Zoom or, phone or internet and in other ways. So there are things, creative things that we're looking at as far as, at the community college level. There hasn't been a whole lot of broadcasting or streaming. So, we're finally starting to move in that direction as an organization where, people have an option, rather than having to, go to the games physically, they'll be able to watch them online. for recruits at our level, typically, the coach would invite them over for a campus visit. They walk the campus, kind of show them everything that's going on. This is another thing that we're looking at as far as having that online, kind of the virtual tour option, where, in a situation like this, where we're not allowed to recruit in person, it's kind of hard for us to expect a student athlete to commit to go somewhere when they haven't even seen it physically. So that's something that we're looking at implementing to kind of give us a little bit of an edge when it comes to the recruiting aspect as well. But I really think in the long term, I don't foresee the situation we're in right now really changing a whole lot as far as how athletics is run or how it operates or what the expectations are moving forward. I think really, if anything, it's going to make people realize that how much they really enjoy, that day-to-day grind of what they're doing. When we were off campus, coaches, athletes, everyone's begging to come back, to be on campus and be able to, run sprints and, go to the weight room and do those things that they may have taken for granted before, realistically. So I really think once this is all over, I think a lot of people are just that have come to that realization are gonna kind of have that fire relit to kind of go back to, if they were taking any of those things for granted, really starting to enjoy just the daily grind of it again.
Makes a lot of sense. It's definitely, with myself, it's made me want that person-to-person interaction.
Right.
It's definitely something I miss, and I'm hearing that a lot as well from many others. We take sometimes these simple things in life for granted, where really they are priceless. But this has been a lesson to all of us, which is great anyway. I think the world needed a bit of a reset.
Yeah, you're right. No more just walking past people anymore. You got to talk to them.
Exactly.
You have the chance. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's hop into the world of NIL. It's a big topic, especially in the most recent weeks. NCAA comes out, says we're definitely moving forward. 2021 is the year. It'll be different across the different conferences, schools, so on and so on. Totally understandable. It's going to be a big change. It has to be governed correctly.
Yeah.
What does the future of NIL look from your eyes, from your lens, from the way you see things?
Yeah, I mean, the future of it for me is really, again, especially at our level, at the community college level, a lot of the times, we focus on some of the struggles that our student athletes have, and at the 4-year level, again, kind of like I talked about even in my career, a lot of those athletes are dealing with, some of those same issues as far as, food insecurity, housing insecurity, or just, again, being able, being a 4-year, especially at that level of student athlete, the expectations as far as, workouts, film, practices, is so high and time consuming that you just may not have the opportunity to have a normal job like other students. And I really think that, giving student athletes the ability to be creative, use their, name, image, likeness, to be able to generate some revenue, and kind of build a brand for themselves, whether that's online through social media or through partnering with, local businesses, and, maybe you're the face of a car dealership or whatever. We need to realize that, yeah, some of these athletes, or it may not impact a whole lot of athletes that may be able to actually take advantage of this opportunity. But I mean, there are cases out there where you've seen high profile college athletes, who, if they had an opportunity while in college, could have capitalized on that popularity, and made, a good chunk of money in their college career, and they didn't have that opportunity. and then maybe, they get derailed, don't get to have the opportunity to go pro, or they go pro and it just doesn't work out. And now that, they had 4 years of potential revenue that they have no opportunity to make back. And I just think, putting that expectation on student athletes, and not on other students is just unfair. In reality, I mean, we're not telling, a business student that he can't start his own business because he's enrolled at the college. He gets a round of applause for starting his own business. But in the case of a student athlete, if they use, their popularity as an athlete, or their population online, whether it's, on YouTube or Instagram, Twitter, whatever, to, kind of govern whether they're able to capitalize that on that or not. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So really where I see this going in the future, obviously it needs to be, regulated, because again, at those higher levels, when you have, boosters around and those things, people are always going to be looking for ways to take advantage of those opportunities. So obviously those are things that need to be figured out. But as far as the community college level, I don't really even see that being a problem, being an issue when it comes to, boosters or any of those things. I mean, we have donors, but it's not at the level of as it is at those 4-year schools. They don't have the same type of influence that they would at that level either. So really, I think for us, really the only regulation that there should be, in my opinion, at the community college level is obviously you can't get paid to compete in any sort of way. So if you're, a basketball player, you can't go in the off season and, compete in a league overseas and be paid for that. But really, other than that, I don't think what athletes, what they're, what they're able to do or able to monetize outside of that, of being compensated for the sport that they're competing in at the college level. I don't think that there should be any regulation outside of that, especially, like I said, here at the 2-year community college level.
Do you have any pieces of advice of what they shouldn't do? Because this is going to be very new and foreign to many people. So
of what they shouldn't do or what they should do?
What they shouldn't do, like potential rabbit holes, things to look at. Everyone's going to tell you what to do, but what they shouldn't do is not going to be something that's going to be relayed to them often. So from what you've seen.
Yeah, and I think really the only other than, again, being compensated for competing as like a professional or semi-pro or whatever, other than that, really the only pitfall I could think of is, especially at our level, again, because a lot of our student athletes, the whole goal of them playing community college athletics is to transfer to a 4-year school, right? So they're still being actively recruited while they're competing as a student athlete at Cypress and at the other 2-year schools across the country. So really the only negative that I see from this potentially for a community college athlete is, being so caught up in monetizing yourself as a collegiate athlete, or having, being endorsed by some sort of like controversial brand or product that you would become undesirable to the 4-year schools who are recruiting you. And just an example, I actually got sent a survey the other day, for community college athletic directors about this topic. One of the questions is, should athletes at the college level be able to be, ambassadors or sponsored by, alcohol brands, cannabis, marijuana brands, those sort of things, where, again, any other student can do those things and it's considered fine. So personally, I don't think that should be regulated for a college student if that's a way for them to make some money. But that could be a potential rabbit hole or pitfall, especially for a 2-year athlete if you're involved with a brand like that. And then some of these 4-year schools that you could potentially, sign with or end up going to that could offer you a scholarship are then kind of dissuaded from you as a student because of some of those associations that you have. So that would really be something that I would, think carefully about before doing. Make sure that you're knowledgeable about whatever brands or companies that you're associating with. Make sure you have a full understanding of what some of those potential repercussions could be. But other than that, I think this is just a slam dunk as far as how this is going to go and the opportunities that could potentially open up, for student athletes. College athletics is only becoming more and more visible. It's going to continue to trend that way. There's nothing, that's showing otherwise. So I think this is only going to be something that continues to provide other avenues for athletes to, support themselves through college and potentially, set them up for careers after they're done with college. Again, you asked me earlier, about me transitioning into the workforce, and kind of like I said, where some of these athletes are so so tightly scheduled with classes and workouts and all those things, they don't have the opportunity to work. This could be a potential opportunity to network outside of athletics and set themselves up for potential careers when they're finished being collegiate athletes. So I think most of it's positive.
Absolutely. Wes, thank you very much. You've been absolutely amazing. You've shared a ton of insight, a lot to learn from, and especially those last few points with the industry heading into new grounds, as they say. They're pretty vital, pretty important. Very important for students to take on board and learn, because in the early days, we're going to see a lot of sad stories that will be avoided later on, because, the early days are always the days where things are tested, few people are sacrificed for the greater good. So it's very important to listen to the advice of those at the top, those that understand how you could potentially get yourself in trouble, or what's right and what's wrong. So once again,
or just taken advantage of, just like some of these pro teams, pro athletes even get taken advantage of by agents all the time. So that's
exactly, man. Exactly, it's life, and it does happen a lot. Wes, before we wrap things up, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so you could find me on LinkedIn, just Wes McCurtis. You could find me on Twitter, Instagram, _ Wes dot WESDOT. Yeah, those are really the two or the three places that you can find me as far as social media is concerned. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or you just want to follow what we're doing in my journey here as the AD at Cypress.
Love it, my man. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Wes McCurtis, once again, thank you very much for joining me on the Sports Wonder podcast.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.